This summer, I walked away from films. I didn't want to see another damn movie so long as I lived. I headed for the hills, for salt water and forests and books and anything but a damn movie. I was tired of them, tired of the ads and posters and the same old plots, and the same old cuts, the same old actors. Most of all, I was tired of knowing everything they had to say. Pauline Kael said, "Other arts show an internal logic in their development, the constant solving of aesthetic challenges. Films have changed simply by following the logic of the market." Or, as paraphrased by Andrei Tarkovsky, the cinema she is a whore. Then again, in a tough world, sometimes being a whore is the only way to survive. Take the summer of 2014. The box office collapsed. I wasn't the only one avoiding the cinema. No one went to see any of the superhero dreck except Guardians of the Galaxy. Why? Because the rabble is bored. We'll now have the spectacle of financially imploding studios grasping for life preservers as the wreckage sinks beneath their feet. Maybe in the ensuing chaos there will be a few more chances taken, on ideas, not budgets, and film, this beautiful shitty art, will have a little room to stretch its legs. The problem, as a market-driven art, has always been us. We, the audience, are the other half of her equation, and we have shitty taste. We forced her to live in the shadows like a guerrilla fighter, picking her battles carefully, but despite our best efforts, she's still got fight in her, a lot, and she's tired of our bullshit. While Hollywood showers us in a shitstorm of pizzazz, filmmakers like Steve McQueen and Nicholas Refn and Gaspar Noé and P.T. Anderson have taken a long step back from the audience and hoisted a middle finger, retreating into a stark and stubborn minimalism that demands you get off your ass and meet it halfway. Their toolkit is less, not more. In an age where you can sit in the multiplex and hear Transformers hammering the tourist traps 3 theaters away, these cats have decided to shut their mouths, cross their arms, and use silence as a weapon. The static camera and the long take are their defenses. They will beat you in a staring contest. Now take Under the Skin, Jonathan Glazer's polarizing alien visitor yarn. On the surface, it's a smooth, facile piece of work without much plot, and owes too much to Stanley Kubrick's visual obsessions without mirroring his provocateur's instincts. But hold on. Wait 24 hours. You might be washing dishes or walking to the car when you find yourself replaying images from the film. You might hear its sounds and remember its moods, its moments. Because this film, as much as any I've seen in the past year, is a living thing to itself, crafted and sculpted and cared for and reared by its director as only a loving parent could. Here is a film that wants to be alive and possess a singular identity, and if it mimics the behaviors of those films which are kindred spirits, so too children mimic their peers. Glaser has, with all his might, tried to make a film which is a vehicle of transformation. To analyze further is to make a physiological catalog of the parts of a horse without loving the beauty of the beast at full gallop. But at the risk of doing so, I'll point out 2 things Glaser has accomplished. First, he's removed nearly all plot. On first viewing of the film, it's what bothered me most, that nothing really happens. Scarlett Johansson's alien visitor wanders around Scotland, enticing lone men into her van, taking them to meet a horrible fate, but finally develops some sort of conscience and meets her own kind of fate. You can read more about the story online, or read Michael Faber's book of the same name, which I haven't, but I think this will only devalue your experience of watching the film. To discuss it in the usual language of plot points, etc., or to think of it as some familiar parable, in short, to explain it, is trivializing. The second thing Glaser has done is shoot in a persistently observant style, at times from cameras hidden in public, and of course the famous scenes of Scarlett Johansson interacting with non-actors who approach her van in order to offer help. This observant approach does 2 things. One is to suggest the alien point of view, free of judgment, and the second is to eventually seduce us over to this point of view and offer us the chance to judge for ourselves. I'm thinking here of the scene where 2 parents drown trying to save their dog and each other, leaving their infant wailing confusedly on the rocky beach. There may be no more horrifying and dazzling image I've seen in the last year of films. Another is the recurrent image of Min, the victims of the alien, who follow her home like flies to the spider in her inky black web. They disrobe as she disrobes. They follow her into a polished black space and are slowly swallowed by the floor. The sight of the men, naked, vulnerable, following their erections to their doom, is open to interpretation. For me, it neatly dismisses the ubiquitous conceit of the modern male as a shaved and perfumed caveman tossing spears at mammoths, aliens, and giant robots, then rounding off his campfire victory dance with some tribally sanctioned baby-making. The narcissism and slavery to his own libido is shown to be not the source of the triumphant male's might, but his most exploitable weakness. In moments like this, and in composing the film to be taken as a whole, Glaser has tapped one of film's inexhaustible wells, its potential for empathy. Empathy not for the usual stock characters overcoming tired odds to get that big promotion, secure a lover, or blow up the bridge, but empathy for anything that is alive and by living experiences vulnerability. Individual forms and faces are sketched vaguely into Glaser's scenes like muddy figures in a landscape by Bruegel or Bosch, but the very distance from them, the obsession with watching, indeed our curiosity as an impulse, is what leads us eventually to want to put an arm around them and talk. In a pointed reversal, our sympathy for the alien's potential victims opens us up to her own victimization when it comes upon her. Scenes or intimations of rape have somehow become a casual plot device and source of titillation even in mainstream films, to the effect that our senses have become as dull to them as to the cartoonish gore of torture porn or the post-9/11 disaster porn of our blockbusters. Yet Under the Skin had, by its final moments, so reminded me of what it means to be human that I could feel only the fear and nausea of the pursued trying to outrun the pursuer. I knew what it meant to be seen as something to be used rather than as a person. I am, for one, in love with film again. Movies like Under the Skin remind me that abstraction, simple and odd combinations of image and sound, are enough to build an impression and even make a great film. Film is alive and well, and it's coming for us, all of us, and she still has a lot of tricks up her sleeve.
Well, thank you very much, William.
You're welcome, sir. I got to say I am not comfortable in the saddle again. That was a tough review to write.
Oh yeah, today I wrote a review for our next episode, and it dawned upon me how it really takes like 2 or 3 times to really get going now. Because we used to do the show every 2 weeks, like 365 days a year. And, you kind of, you're in a rhythm. And now, we take a long time off, and some of us aren't on every show. And it's really difficult, right?
It is. I'm rusty. I ain't gonna lie.
But it was.
It was an awesome review, though. Alton.
Like that was an A review, whereas mine's gonna be a D review. No, but seriously. Well, first of all, guys, I want to welcome everybody back. It's season 4. We've come a long way. It's great to have everyone at the table here. I hope you all had a great summer. I'm really excited about talking to you guys about this film and the 2 classic films we're going to be doing next week. We're going to be talking about The Man Who Fell to Earth and The Brother from Another Planet. We're obviously starting with this one. And Billy, this film gave me the same kind of excitement it gave you.
That's great to hear, Tom.
I get chills just even thinking about it.
That's awesome, dude.
It's funny that you talk about plotless filmmaking, Bill, because Joe and I had a little discussion, did we not, Joe, over the summer about Linklater's Boyhood.
The other savior of a film that came out over the summer.
It's so funny
or this year, early part of this year.
A couple of plotless films really got me excited this summer, and that was revisiting Slacker by Richard Linklater, and now doing this Jonathan Glaser movie, Under the Skin. There's something going on here with filmmakers that deal with plotless cinema, because there's I don't know what it is, but there's so much room to give the viewer so much more. It's amazing, and I'm not quite sure why. I mean, maybe you guys could shed a little light on it, but it's.
I think Bill, you kind of touched upon it in your review. It's just that you get tired. I mean, you just get worn out and tired of the same old formula coming at you.
This is like the oldest argument in cinema has always been between cinema and the other art forms, primarily theater. And the idea got sort of schlepped into American filmmaking early on that it was an industry and it's an entertainment and it needs to make money. So they basically just borrowed piecemeal, theatrical tradition. So plot and actor and, boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl, and all of these plot things basically got shoved into it. So on the one hand, you get the school of filmmaking that's just that. I guess it's like a traditional argument. There's that, and then there's what people imagine to be this concept of pure filmmaking, which is all you need is image and sound. Dialogue is part of sound. Music is part of sound. Sound effects are part of sound. And image can be anything.
And you build up.
And you build impressions out of that, And very early on, I mean, as early as the 1910s and 1920s, there were especially French filmmakers and German filmmakers doing these abstract films that were just images and impressions, and in America, it's just, traditionally been very tough to make that kind of movie because we think of it as entertainment. I mean, you go online and look at the reviews, the negative reviews for Under the Skin, whether it's Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb or whatever, and there's just this vitriol pointed at what the hell was that about? There's no plot. There's no plot. There's nothing. And I'm like, well, I get that, but who says you need a plot in a movie?
Well, it's a lot harder work to for the average person to like get it when they have, when they don't have something to hang their thoughts on.
Yeah.
When they have to like search for it.
Yeah, there's nothing comforting there. There's nothing to set you at ease there. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's what we all need to. I mean, that's a shame that instead of exploring ourselves in these experiences of cinema, we're going after comfort.
Well, yeah, absolutely, Tom. I have so many ideas coming into my head just what you guys are talking about, but I'm just curious to hear what Jeff's general reaction to the film was. Was it positive or negative?
I loved it.
Oh, right.
I wish that. Well, actually, this goes back to Tom's library comment. I had tried to go to my library, which is I would not recommend to anyone to go to.
Your library or the library in general?
The Neptune Public Library.
Okay.
But I looked online on the online catalog, and I was like, oh yeah, cool. Under the Skin's there. I'll go pick it up and watch it Wednesday or Thursday or whenever. It was gone. It was out. So I didn't actually get to watch it until this afternoon, which
wow.
I mean, I'm glad
that's a fresh perspective.
Yeah, which I mean, I'm glad that it came today because otherwise, I'd be pulling a
well. That's interesting. That's interesting, Jeff. I'm glad that you did get to see it, but as Billy mentioned in his review, and I had a very similar response, and I don't know, Tom, if you did as well, but I was just thinking. It took me like a few days for this thing to sink in. You know what I mean?
It's so funny. Billy said that also, that it took him 24 hours. Now, it happened with me with The Brother from Another Planet, where things started to sink in a little bit. But this film, Joe, I was really immersed in it immediately. And I was really surprised. And a lot of it had to do with the score, Billy, for some reason.
That is one of the great scores of the last decade.
Absolutely.
And he found that, it's amazing. There's no doubt about it.
Who's that? Mika
Levy or something?
It's outstanding.
Yeah.
It's hypnotizing.
Yeah.
I will also say this. I wonder if it's easier to watch this film in the comfort of your own home where you feel safe, because I saw it in the theater and it had an almost overwhelming negative response from everybody, and even almost from me. Like when it ended, I was just like, I have no idea what to think about that film. And for you guys to have like
and I love that sometimes there's like this sort of high wire period where you walk out of a movie like that and you're like, I don't know which way I'm going to fall on this, and then over the next 24 hours, like sometimes you just realize, God, that was a piece of shit,
right?
Like,
you just forget.
And then you just like, and then this one, all of a sudden,
most times you're right, Tom. You do almost always just forget about it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But then you get like when we were walking out of the theater there, it was like an art house theater or whatever, and most of the people, I just heard negative responses. Like, that was fucking, what was that supposed, like, what was that? Like, David Lynch, like, and whenever anybody can't understand something in a movie, it's always David Lynch. It's always David Lynch.
But it'd be interesting to hear what those people are saying, the next day when they have
and that's the thing, man. I mean, you walk out of that theater and you're like, all right, I'm going to suspend judgment here for a second, because it takes a while for it to wrap itself around. And it wasn't until like the next day, 2 days, I was just walking. I'm like, oh, it just dawned on me. I was like, oh, a lot of the stuff that Billy was talking about how, these ideas were starting to come into my head, like, oh, human empathy is a profoundly human quality, and that is a weakness. It's a weakness. I mean, which is sort of the inroad to what the film is trying to say, and it didn't even occur to me until like after, because when you're first watching it, you're trying to make sense of what's happening, where it's going. Again, there's no plot, so you're not sure why or what.
You're just not sure how to respond, because you're neurologically you're conditioned by so many movies that there's times where you're just reacting according to how supposed to react, right? Like they tell, in movies, the formulas are so boiled down that oftentimes, like, I find myself sort of waking up out of a stupor when I'm in the middle of a movie that's sort of mediocre, and I'm laughing at things and whatever, but I'm laughing at it because that's the time at which I'm supposed to laugh,
Right.
And all of a sudden this movie comes in and it doesn't feed you the easy formula for how to respond to a particular situation. Like that scene on the beach, I was almost bored with when I was in the theater, and it wasn't until like later that I'm thinking about it and I'm just like, God, that's like, it lingered, the image of that baby sitting on the beach lingered, and it's more disturbing residing in your thoughts than when you're actually watching the movie.
Right. That scene affected me immediately, but it has lingered. It's weird that some would have an immediate reaction to that, and to others it might happen.
Well, here's another little anecdote from the screening that I was at. It's, again, it was this art house movie theater, so like they have like a bulletin board in the lobby or whatever, and it has like your comments that you write after the movie's over or whatever. and Susie and my wife and I were walking in. I was like, listen, I don't want to look at that board. We're not looking at the board. We just walk past the board. And then on the way out, of course, I'm hearing all these comments or whatever. And then we stopped by the board, and one of the comments was like, I don't understand why that baby scene was just completely unnecessary, and it shouldn't have been in there. Yeah. And and again, I just reserved judgment on it, and it wasn't until like hours and days later that I was like, oh, that scene is completely necessary to.
But here's the thing, though. Like, is it really fair to like immediately critique a film after watching? Like immediately. I mean, think about all these people that do this for a living, where they're, probably sitting in the theater with like a laptop or some kind of a device taking notes. And then they walk out of the theater and they go to their homes or their hotel rooms or wherever they may go, and they just start writing a review. I have done this show for 2 years now, and if there's anything that I've learned is you can't write about a film the minute you stop watching a movie. I mean, in my opinion,
I completely agree, man. It's occurred to me so many times.
Sleep, at least,
especially just like what Billy was saying, like you like to write these reviews the way that we've come to write them, and not that it's necessary. We even, the rule on the show is do whatever the fuck you want. Intro, all you have to do is just talk about the movie as an introduction. It could be just talking about it or whatever. But the way that it's kind of evolved, Tom, is that we put a lot of thought and energy and heart into these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's occurred to me a lot. Like, how could you just watch a movie like this movie or a lot of any movie? Right. You know what I mean? Right. And just pump out review after review. Right. It's almost foreign.
Yeah, and it's unfair to really talk about any film intelligently with just one viewing of it. To be honest, if you really think about it, I mean, we're just talking. We're not even talking about the little intricacies of this film. We're talking about how people perceive seeing films like this.
Well, here's the other thing,
which is a good start.
Yeah, well, here's another thing that Billy was talking about is that like the market driving the art form, right? Well, we're people who are critiquing movies are critiquing them or talking about them like product, like consumer. What's that? Consumer affairs or what? No, what is it? What's that?
Consumer reports.
There you go. It's Consumer Reports. Like they're talking about it like, oh well, that chair has a sturdy leg, but the shine wears off it. You know what I mean? So
the biggest problem I have with reviewing these movies is after every movie I see that I like, my only review that I can think of is one sentence: "I liked it. Go see it." That's it, right?
But that's great.
And then if there's a bad movie, I can instantly come up with 50 paragraphs to shit on the movie, but I don't want to do that either.
So that's why the thumbs up, thumbs down way of doing things might be the most brilliant of them all.
So Jeff, after seeing it just a couple of hours ago, I mean, what's happening? Did this stuff all like kind of you're reacting to some of these themes that we're talking about already, or
yeah? I mean, I knew that I was only going to have an hour or so, I guess like an hour really, between watching it. So I was like really kind of like trying to piece it together as it was going, which was I probably would have benefited just to kind of let it happen and then have a day or two to like think about it. But I mean, you know, that's the way it goes sometimes. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, it was like what he was trying to say was very like powerful to me, and you know, like a scene like that, the family and the dog and baby, like that scene, you know, it like I could see, you know, someone judging that scene immediately and saying that's unnecessary, but once you get to like the, you know, the last third of the movie, it really starts to make sense. You know, it's like the first human like feeling that she has.
It's like seeing it in hindsight, kind of. Everything sort of gels together after you realize, you know, what's happened, what she's gone through.
Right.
You know, you understand the importance of stuff like, you know, she falls down and somebody helps her up. Like, that's not, you know, that's not a movie scene. You know, that's just an occurrence.
That's
almost
like a painting. You know, like it's just a moment that has nothing to do with drama or anything. But the you know, we were talking about plot a minute ago. I think every movie does need a plot. It's just that the plot need not be necessarily visible to you in the way that you're accustomed to seeing, and it need not be about the things you're accustomed to seeing plots as, right? So that is a dramatic moment because she recognizes something about sympathy for the people that the people have around her, you know?
Yeah.
Good point.
So that is a plot point, but you're just not used to seeing that as a plot point.
Well, the plot is what happens to her.
You're not used to having to figure out what the plot point is.
Yeah, exactly. Like what does that mean that I just saw? You know, like it's just, you know.
That's exactly it.
There was actors going wink, wink into the camera when something happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, or the music crescendoing, telling you how to feel about that, or any of those usual tricks that, you know.
Sure.
Have you
guys, even like dialogue where she's like, "Oh, I can't believe you know,
you're kind enough to pick me up."
Yeah, or like the, you know, on the beach, like I can't. Well, after that guy wakes up from her knocking him out, you know, like. She wasn't like, oh, I can't believe you tried to save that family. I can't believe humans can be so good.
Right. And then the camera lowers and the sky panorama fills out behind her, and she turns in profile nobly. And,
he's on riding a bike and he's on the handlebar and she's on the handlebars.
Right. Or like, I'll let you go. You're one of the good ones.
Have you guys seen his other movies, Birth and Sexy Beast?
One thing I'm ashamed of is I've never screened Sexy Beast, and this is something that I've been, you know, I've heard so much about over the years, and I for the life of me, I can't figure out why I haven't screened it. Billy, you did mention Birth the other day in a message, but no, I have not. I've not watched either one of those films.
I've seen them both.
You guys, Joe, you saw Sexy Beast, right?
Yeah, I have. That's the one with
Ben Kingsley.
Ben Kingsley. Yeah, I loved it. That was a great film. I have a weird reaction to Birth, but I want to hear what you have to say about it before I tell you. It's more anecdotal, my reaction to Birth, than anything else. So.
I just thought that I saw it in the theater when it came out, and I had a sort of a middling reaction to it. I really enjoyed a lot of it, but I didn't really, you know, it created kind of a lasting impression, but not a great impression. And then I saw it again last week, and I loved it. I mean, up until probably the last third, I loved it. I thought that it sort of collapsed under its own weight, partly because he tried to resolve things with a plot point, like a plot twist kind of a thing. And so I think in a way he almost learned his lesson on that and said, you know, if I'm going to commit myself to this more avant-garde abstract way of filmmaking, then I better take it all the way and not sort of chicken out at the end, you know? So I love the filmmaking of Birth. I think it's in a weird way, it's a companion piece to Eyes Wide Shut, because both have Nicole Kidman, both are in New York, and both are filmed in this, you know, obviously Jonathan Glaser is retracing Kubrick's footsteps and trying to get out where he ended and then get out in front of him even further.
I was going to say, this is the second time that you've mentioned Glaser and Kubrick in the same sentence so far.
Don't
Yeah.
you? I mean, do you guys see
he
the
loves-
similarities in their?
Yeah, he
in
seems
their
to love
style?
2001. There's that like
Only
blue,
that tone, yeah,
There's-
yeah,
like there's that blue light in the beginning,
yeah.
and then I think there's even like the soundtrack sounds like the Monolith. You know,
On the
Crazy.
on the interview track of Under the Skin, he actually cited that Monolith sound and saying that he's like that was part of the attraction for me for that film, because I never knew what it meant, and that was you're left to put to ask yourself what it might mean.
Joe, what was your anecdotal reaction?
So yeah, I mean, I love the atmosphere of Birth. I thought it was really beautiful. And I think that you're right about the convention thing, because actually also on that interview track of Under the Skin, he mentions that the first draft of this film, Under the Skin, was very conventional, and closer to the novel. He said it was very good, but they couldn't get funding for it. And actually it was a blessing in disguise. But the thing is, I watched Birth probably right when it came out, and I didn't remember it like at all, and then I watched it maybe last year, and I'm watching this movie and I'm like, I don't know. I know what's going to happen. Like, I completely forgot I had watched the film,
Yeah.
And the whole time I'm like, I know exactly what's going to happen with this film. This fucking film sucks, And then it was only like maybe 3/4 of the way through, I was like, oh shit, I've seen this film before. So like, it was a really weird situation, because it's so reliant on, the reveal at the end, and I completely knew it, and it felt like I knew it because the filmmaking was obvious, which wasn't the case. I had just friggin' watched it, but it was just a very odd
I feel like
odd situation.
Jonathan Glaser worked in commercials and music videos since the late 80s, early 90s. And, I swear to God, music videos and commercials have done more to fuck film over than anything else in its history. Because these guys, like David Fincher, has worked his entire career to divorce himself of the conventions of commercial and music video making.
Yeah.
And I feel like
Spike Jonze, yeah.
All of them, man,
yeah.
And in all of them, there's moments in their movies where you look at it and you go, like, what's his name? Michael Romanek? Mark Romanek, who did 1 Hour Photo with Robin Williams and all that. Like, there's these movies that are daring in one regard, but they're so stuck in convention in other ways that it's like, I mean, I see Jonathan Glaser just working his damnedest to get out of that mentality, and I mean, he did as well as he's ever done in Under the Skin, I think, but it's still a sand trap, I think.
One thing I do want to mention too, Bill, there's something about watching a film that doesn't take place in America also that really draws me into it. I find that, like, when I'm watching these films in America, they all take place in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and you just they all have that same feel to them, basically. But whenever I watch, a film from Europe or Asia or wherever, I'm immediately more into it for some reason, just because of the landscape, the towns, the cities just have a completely and entirely
everywhere except for Italy.
But there's something about it, and I noticed that as well watching this movie, was that I kind of have, I kind of get drawn into a film a little bit more that doesn't take place here in the United States.
I think there's something to that, and in fact, I think Joe and I talked about this a couple of years ago, but I've always wondered I had always wondered if all those Ingmar Bergman movies would be a lot worse if they were spoken in English. And then I watched one of his movies that was written in English, and the actors spoke English, and it was pretty bad. I was like, wow, this is some pretentious posturing bullshit. This is like,
I know they all.
It's a lot easier when I don't understand what the fuck they're saying.
Well, it's funny because a lot of Ingmar Bergman stuff is like stuff you might read in like a philosophy book or like a Camus book or something like that. So when you're reading it in subtitles, it actually kind of works.
The subtitle writer can like fix stuff, like make it a little more artful,
make it palatable.
Well, you could get away with some of the literary trappings of,
Yeah.
wording and stuff like that easier when you're reading it than if you're processing it by, hearing it.
And you've got Max von Sydow's gigantic cranium filling your screen, and he's looking all angsty, and there's the wind blowing on Faro in the background. And like when he says something like, I'm convinced that we're a stain on the shoe of God, you're like, well, of course that's what he would say in that, but if you say it in English, it just sounds ridiculous.
Although, we just talked about Linklater, Tom, and his stuff is very, aside from Boyhood and even in Slacker, like a lot of that dialogue is very like written kind of dialogue, like, pontification and all that stuff. And it kind of works,
The great thing about Linklater is when he has people sitting in cafeterias over orange soda saying that stuff. And it never feels too contrived because it feels like those characters would be sitting there.
Right.
Talking.
He's right. Yeah. He's writing about those guys. Yeah.
Billy, you're right about Glaser and Kubrick, I think, because Glaser seems to like to make a film every 10 years, just like Stanley Kubrick.
Well, it took him 10 years to get this one made, evidently, and like I said, he was trying to sell a more conventional plot and just didn't get the budget that he needed for it. So
it was one of the many projects Brad Pitt was attached to originally. And,
is that right?
Yeah, and then had to quit.
He is attached to everything, that dude.
He gets a lot of independent filmmakers' hopes up and then just dashes them thoroughly.
He was attached to Meat Cycle, wasn't he, Joe?
Yeah, he actually was in my Meat Cycle. He's the one guy behind the mask. Actually. I had Brad Pitt on film, and I was like, "What does this need?" I said, "Look, you know what? Let's cover his face."
Well, guys, I know it's been a long summer, and everybody's wondering what we've all been up to and whatnot. Before we end the show and talk a little cutting room business, does anybody else have anything they want to talk about under the skin? Jonathan Glaser, anything we've been discussing? Please throw it out there.
I just wanted to say that I brought this one.
Billy, it's always Joe.
Sorry, I just going to say quick. I brought this out there because I thought that it would, we'd get somebody reacting against it, So it actually didn't work out the way that I planned, but that's a good thing. We had people's reactions to this are violently against it. A lot of people.
Joe, the three people that were on the panel tonight.
I know.
Now listen, did you if you had to pick one of us, who would you have thought would have disliked this movie?
Probably you, because I had talked to Billy about it briefly the last time we got drunk together, and we talked about it for a couple minutes. I knew that he liked it. I don't really know Jeff's taste so well yet, so I was thinking it would be you, but I knew it would have been Max if he saw. I'm pretty sure, except Max would have, of course. What would Max be? Can you do Max talking about this film?
Oh my God. No,
you do the best Max impression.
I don't do any Max impression.
Come on, you could do it. Do it.
Oh.
What would Max be saying about the film?
About Scarlett Johansson's big luscious boobies and delicious ripe ass? Is that what?
When she is eating the cake, I wish I was the frosting on that cake. She could gag on my cake any day of the week. That is my Max Cook impression, ladies and gentlemen. But hey, listen, speaking of Max Cook, Joe, him and a former member of the Cutting Room Movie Podcast just got together to go on a little joyride. The video's up on YouTube. We'll put it on our website with this episode. These two knuckleheads getting together on a hot Los Angeles day. What's up with that?
Evidently, Max is very busy with all sorts of stuff.
Exactly.
He's too busy to do anything. He's driving around with Jenna Payne. What were they doing?
He went to a cemetery. They crashed a funeral. A burial, I think. What else did they do? I don't even know what they were up to. I mean,
They went to a red box. It was very fascinating. They went to a red box. They went to a funeral.
And you can text Max Cook during any afternoon, and he's always telling me how busy he is.
He's very busy. He's busy with Jenna riding around the Payne-mobile and watching Alice. Mel's Diner.
She branded her car, Joe. Now, this is something you might want to think about doing.
I am gonna do that actually. I've done it already. I made it the Payne.
And Jeff, you should do that for your band. Whatever, do you do that? Actually, that's something that I'm sure some bands might do.
Oh, like putting like a band logo or something or brand. What that says is hey cops, we're a band. Search us for drugs.
Exactly. Why would you want to? Yeah. Why would you want to draw that attention to yourself when you're out on the highway? It makes no sense. Well, guys, listen. Thanks a lot. Thanks so much, Joe. Thank you for bringing Under the Skin to the table. Completely fascinating, dude. Seriously, I had an awesome time, and like Billy, I swear, I really got excited. I got excited for at least 24 hours about films. Oh, Billy, by the way, in your review, you wrote about how you wanted to stay away from films, and you kind of get sick of that same thing over and over again. I am with you 100% on that, dude. I kind of get like that too every once in a while.
I think it's necessary, especially like, I mean, we just have information overload these days anyway, right? Like there's TV and internet and movies and everything. And, you know, part of the joy of watching this movie was the sense of tactile sensation. You know, like when you see those rocks and you see that Scottish countryside and you hear the sounds of people and everything, you know, you spend a couple months away from media and you feel real everything all the time. And then you come back and see a beautiful movie like this, you know, the movie is only as good as the person who's coming to watch it. So, you know, all I can say is, you know, turn off your televisions once in a while, go for a nice long hike, and then earn the right to watch a good movie, you know?
Absolutely. Well, we hope that the comment boards light up a little bit here on our YouTube channel, Joe, and also on our website, thecuttingroommoviepodcast.com. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast is brought to you by Christiana Productions and New Media Limited. The show is edited and co-produced by Joseph Schreck and produced by Thomas Detloff and Joe Christiana. You can like us on Facebook at The Cutting Room Movie Podcast and follow me on Twitter, Thomas Detloff at TCRM Podcast. You could also check out Joe's film work at ChristianaProduction.com. You can check out Jeff's new Black Wine album. His band Black Wine just put out an album, Yell Boss, available on Don Giovanni Records. And they're also playing Friday, September 26th at Cooler Ranch in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and Saturday, September 27th at Shea Stadium in Brooklyn, New York. Shea Stadium, Jeff?
Yeah, they picked it up, put it on the back of a truck,
and they moved it over to Brooklyn. Is this true, Billy? Have you heard about this?
It's in my backyard right now, actually.
Well, that's awesome. Good for you, and good luck with that, Jeff. I heard the Beatles played there.
Yeah, and the Ruddles.
Hey, listen, Max Cook has a new blog. It's maxcookuncorked.com. Check that out, and also check out Max and Adam's Bowler Hat Productions and their Mimosa podcast show, maxcookandthecounselor.com. That's where you can check that out. And Dave Pace, this is all exciting stuff here, Joe. Dave Pace
is back.
Is now a contributing writer at Rue Morgue magazine. Look for his work over there, and you can check out his blog on horror media. I didn't even know that this was a subject. Horror media politics. Okay, at La Politique Psychotronique, which you can find at psychotronique and idealforliving.com. Sorry, Dave. I really love what you're doing. I really do. Music from The Cutting Room is done by the Zillatones. Check them out at www.thezillatones.com or search for the Zillatones at reverbnation.com. Jesus, Joe, this is taking me forever.
Our plugs are like the Gettysburg Address at this point.
Thank God. Everybody went crazy. We'll be back next week, man. We're going to continue with weirdo alien films. We've got The Man Who Fell to Earth. Jeff is going to introduce that. And we also have The Brother from Another Planet, directed by John Sayles. I'm going to introduce that. Until then, we're over and we're out. Ciao.